Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, December 19th, 2018. Another day closer to Christmas. Just 6 more to go. Hope you're getting your shopping done. And no snow on the ground. It was actually raining as I was coming in this morning. The weather's been pretty nice lately. Nice walking weather, nice walking outdoors weather for December, at least in Iowa. And so we are going to get to the word today. Sorry for yesterday. We're going to call this part 2. We are going to finish Proverbs 13 today, so that we move on to Proverbs 14 tomorrow. So had a very good visit with my son last night. We cracked out a Christmas movie. He wanted to watch Home Alone. Of course, we had bought a movie 4-pack. Have a lot of Christmas movies at our house. And was going through all the Christmas movies and going through them again and again. And of course, couldn't find the movie he wanted to watch. And so Becky had to go off to the store last night and find it so that we can watch it this weekend. And so what we watched is Miracle on 34th Street. Another good movie. It's the newer version. In a lot of cases, I always tend to say that the first movie is always the best movie. And then people a lot of times will remake, or they'll make a part 2 or part 3 or part 25. And it always seems like the original movie is always the best movie. In this case, I've watched both Miracle on 34th Street, and I prefer the newer one. And of course, people can disagree and prefer the older one. But in that case, I actually prefer the newer version, which of course is probably about an early 1990s version. So that's probably 25 years old itself. I don't know exactly what year that movie was made, but it's a very good movie. It's just very good to get into the holiday season. So far we've watched Polar Express. Of course, I had to watch It's a Wonderful Life, which I talked about, and Miracle on 34th Street. So we're going to be watching Home Alone at some point, and probably got to watch the Santa Claus. And so we've got all kinds of Christmas movies, and we'll put those in this weekend, and hoping to spend some time with the son. Of course, he's now going to be working most of the weekend, so that's a bummer. So I said we'll have to sneak those movies in when he's not at work, because they've got him working both on Saturday and Sunday this weekend. So we will see. Anyway, good morning, Scott. How are you doing today? And so we are going to get into the Word. And like I said, we're going to finish off on Proverbs 13 today. We've got Proverbs. We'll start at verse 21. Better make sure my volume's up. He always says a lot of times that my volume's not up. And then I start talking louder. So we go to verse 21. It says, "Disaster pursues sinners, but the righteous are rewarded with good. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. The fallow ground of the poor would yield much food, but is swept away through injustice. Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. The righteous has enough to satisfy his appetite, but the belly of the wicked suffers want." And that's it. That is Proverbs 13, verses 21 through 25. And so what I've been doing is I've been adding this commentary, which, well, for one, we've slowed this down. It kind of felt like as we were going through the first 10 chapters, we were just kind of racing through it, and thought that was really not doing it its justice, not digesting it. And so I don't know how I did it, but one day I started looking up commentaries, and I looked up this Matthew Henry, and there's a lot of commentaries out there. And what I always preface is I always say, I feel that the commentaries are good, but they should only serve as an aid, that they should never replace the Word, because we always need to make sure we're getting into the Bible. The Bible can be confusing and hard to understand. And sometimes the commentary, or I have a Bible in which it has the red letters at the bottom, which will kind of help you as well. That we should always stay in the Word, and we should never allow the commentaries or other books to go over what the Word says. They should be used as aids to help us, but always stay in the Bible, because the Bible is the Word. So anyway, if I go to Proverbs 13:21, it reads, "When God pursues sinners, he is sure to overtake them, and he will reward the righteous." And when I wrote for this, is something I always come up and I always think about a lot, is the whole idea of condemnation versus conviction. When God speaks to us, he never condemns us. Now, the enemy will condemn us, but God will convict us. He will at times make us feel bad about what we may have said or done, but he never condemns us. And what he wants us to do is he wants us to seek repentance for what we have said or done. And once we do that, we are in a good, healthy relationship with him. If we try to hide or try to avoid what we're in and not seek his repentance or forgiveness, then we're going to continue to fall further away from him. And we'll be overtaken, because the thing is that when we become born again, we are still sinners. This is very interesting. I thought about this driving home yesterday. We may sin less, but we will not be sinless. See how you drag those two words out, you separate them, it can create a whole different way of looking at it. We, as believers, will sin less than we did before. We'll find ourselves being better than we were about things such as, like in my case, the whole profanity thing. And I was so good with profanity before, and now I don't say it like I used to. I might say some mild words, it might slip out, but nothing really strong like it was before. You know, the strong profanity words. And so the thing is that when you are born again, you live with the desire to sin less, but you won't be sinless, because there's only one man that was sinless, and we will never be him, and God is okay with that. He understands, because we were born in these corrupt bodies, and as we've been born in these corrupt bodies, we are going to continue to sin. Even though we try not to, we will continue to, just as because of what we're in. And one day we will rid ourselves of these bodies, and we'll be reunited with a heavenly body, a body that will not be corrupt and that will last forever, that won't break down like these bodies do. And as you get older, you feel the aches and pains even more. But God allows us to repent when we do sin so that we can be back to our light and free. The spirit is supposed to be light and free and not supposed to be heavy and burdened down. Proverbs 13:22, Matthew Henry commentary, concise commentary. The servant of God who is not anxious about riches takes the best method of providing for his children. We're not anxious about riches, but we take the best method of providing for his children. And so what I look at, and when I think about this, is that we look at the differences between some people. There are those people that look to conserve and to look to provide and leave behind for the future generations, that try to do their best to leave the world a better place for those that come behind them, their children, their grandchildren, and if you live long enough, even your great-grandchildren. And then there's others that live for today. They're not worried about tomorrow. That they make massive amounts of money and they spend like they have massive amounts of money. They try to impress others with their riches. They throw their money around like there is no tomorrow. They don't think about tomorrow. Because they have so much money, they just feel like they can continue to make it. And that's where you then run into people like athletes and famous people that are able to amass great amounts of money during their playing days. And then all of a sudden, their playing days end. They get a freak injury on the field one day or on the court, and they're not able to work anymore. And then soon thereafter, they have to declare bankruptcy. And some of us can't understand how people can somehow make millions and millions and millions of dollars, money that we'll never see in our lifetime. And then all of a sudden, they're declaring bankruptcy. They have nothing because they lived in excess. They made mass amounts of money, and they had no plan. They spent like there was no tomorrow. They weren't mindful of those behind them. And so the thing is that it's not a matter of that we're supposed to live with nothing. But we should be always mindful of those around us and those that are going to come in behind us so that we leave something behind for our kids. We're not going to be able to take it with us. And that's where it's wise that we're storing riches in heaven. That we're doing things while we have a chance so that we're storing our riches in a place that we'll be reunited with one day. And so the thing is that what we need to do, Scott says, Joseph prophesied 7 years of feast followed by 7 years of famine. And so the smart man, what he does is he doesn't blow it all while there's feast. That he's putting some aside during the years of famine. And the thing is that the smart man knows that tomorrow is not promised to him or her. That we may not be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. But what we understand is that if we're not able to, we're leaving something behind for our spouse or our children or our grandchildren. And I'm okay with that. Proverbs 13:23, the poor, yet industrious, thrive, though in a homely manner, while those who have great riches are often brought to poverty for want of judgment. The poor, yet industrious, thrive through a homely manner. And I just wrote that I wrote these words. I don't know what I was thinking about when I wrote these words. But what I wrote down, because I was going to do this yesterday, and of course I didn't do it yesterday, and so now I'm kind of reading notes that I had wrote for yesterday. So what I wrote is, I wrote a verses. So it's kind of like comparing and contrasting. So I wrote on one side, I wrote meaningful and important versus frivolous and foolish. That the poor don't have very much, but what they have is very meaningful to them, is very important to them. They don't have much, and what they do have has great importance in their life. But yet those who have great riches can become very frivolous and very foolish. Because they have great riches, they have many possessions. They have many wants. And they're able to easily satisfy all their wants. And so they can easily buy something, enjoy it for a moment or two, and then just cast it aside. And then go out and purchase the next want. Whereas one that does not have great riches, they'll acquire something, they'll purchase something. It'll have great importance to them. They will hold on to it. I guess what I think about is, I think about my vehicle. I don't go out and get the top of the line vehicle. I get a vehicle that's going to be very safe. It's going to be very reliable. And then I'm going to run it into the ground. Not going to literally drive it into the ground. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run it until I can't run it anymore. I don't care if I've got the next fancy vehicle. I'm not into huge bling bling. I want something that's going to be safe and reliable and durable. And I'm going to hold it very close to me. My vehicle is very close to me. This is my prayer vehicle. This vehicle has been hit 4 times. I've been sideswiped. I've been rear-ended. But it always keeps me safe. It's my prayer vehicle. When I drive to work, it's the vehicle I go into prayer with. When I drive home, it's the vehicle I listen to my daily pastor show. And I've listened to a lot of other messages and Christian songs. I'm very out of the loop in Christian music, or not in non-Christian music today. I know the 70s and 80s quite well. I listen to Casey Kasem every day. But I don't really know the music of today, because I've kind of fallen away from that. But I digress. But what it is I cherish the possessions I do have. And what I have is very important to me. And it's just the people that have so much riches, they can have so many nice things, but they don't mean as much because they can easily just go out and buy another one. Proverbs 13:24. He acts as if he hated his child, who by false indulgence permits sinful habits to gather strength, which will bring sorrow here and misery hereafter. Now this one took me into a really strange direction, but I think it was a really good one. What I wrote is, lack of discipline early in one's life will continue as one gets older. I don't know if you're like me, but there was great discipline in my life as a youngster. When I did something wrong, I knew it, if you get what I mean. There was apparatuses. There was the hand that was used. When we got in trouble, we got disciplined. Now, of course, as I go back into my past, there was times in which it can go too far. And again, that's what I always say, is that something can go too far. We have to always seek the middle of the road, and that you can easily get caught up in one ditch or the other. And sometimes discipline can go too far. It can go into excess or be very undisciplined in giving discipline. But discipline is good. It made me a better person. It made me understand that when I do something wrong, that there's going to be a consequence to it. And that's what my parents taught me. And as I was disciplined as a youngster, I became disciplined as an adult. Disciplined and focused. Whereas a child that is not disciplined when they're younger, this is where we run into the problems of today, and the children feeling this sense of entitlement to everything because they have no discipline, because they weren't disciplined. It's a play on words, that because we're not disciplined, we can lack discipline in our lives. And so it isn't bad for a child to understand and sometimes take a swat on the behind. And people would accuse me of saying I am endorsing child abuse. No. And that's when you go into the other ditch. You know, a swat on the butt is a lot different than a full-out beating. You know, sometimes even using timeout, sending the child to a corner, or to sit on a stair somewhere, on the stairs, and to take a time out so that they can reflect on what they did. And sometimes you can just get it by that alone, because I've seen it in action where children don't like to be able to, or not to sit in a corner. You know, they'll have them sit in the corner and looking at the corner, and they can't move until they're told to. And that way they're able to reflect on what they've done wrong and understand that there's a consequence to their actions. Because if we don't show children there's a consequence to their actions when they're younger, they'll never get it when they're older. And then there is the problem of two working parents. And it's just so sad, because there was the years in the past in which, you know, the guy went out and worked, and the woman was able to stay at home and to take care of the children and take care of the home. And yes, it's kind of a picture-perfect situation, kind of like Leave It to Beaver and June and Ward Cleaver, and Ward would go to work and June would take care of the house and have her nice little apron on and probably bake some cookies, and the kids would go to school and come home. Those kids were taken care of well because they always, the mother is just so good at doting with children and taking care of and looking over those children. And the guy is a good provider. Both roles are very, very important. And what happens when both parents are forced to go out into work? And sadly, there's people that go out and have to work 2 and 3 jobs in this society now. And there's no time for the children because we're so busy working and trying to provide that the children are kind of then left in a situation in which they fend for themselves. And then we wonder why we have the problems we have today. And we wonder why children feel like they are not loved, that they've been ignored, and in some cases may lack discipline because they weren't disciplined. And everything starts going crazy. And then all of a sudden, those kids become parents. And the cycle continues on. We have to find the middle of the road. Kids need discipline, but we can't go too far to the point where they're becoming abused, because that's not right either. Because you're putting great trauma onto a child if you're abusing them and creating a whole new set of problems in their life. And so it's just so important that we always find the middle of the road in things. And so we're not in one ditch or the other. $13.25. It is the misery of the wicked that even their sensual appetites are always craving. The righteous feed on the word and ordinances to the satisfying of his soul with the promises of the gospel and the Lord Jesus Christ, who is the bread of life. And when I wrote, without the presence of the Lord, we are always left unsatisfied and wanting more. And I totally understand this one. Until I found the Lord, I felt like I never had enough. You acquire something, and then you're always looking forward to the next thing. Now, Becky would say I've gone to the opposite extreme, because it drives her crazy, because I am so not in want of things that she'll ask me, what do you want? And I have no great want, because I have everything I need. Well, maybe not everything I need, but there are some things that I want that are not possessions. There are things that I want that I have to wait for. And I don't really want to go into them on this venue, on this message, because they're kind of personal things. Because they're not possessions, but they're relationships. We'll just leave it at that. There are relationships that I want, that unfortunately, for one reason or another, I can't have right now. Possessions are not a huge priority for me. Like I said, I love my vehicle, and I'll drive my vehicle until it drives no more. And then I'll be in a position in which I'll be forced to get a new vehicle, and it'll probably be very similar to the vehicle I have right now, because I love my Honda CR-V. I've had it since 2010. It's got almost 200,000 miles on it now, and it's run real well. Before that, I had a Civic, in which I got that back in 1998. So since 1998, I have only had 2 vehicles. That's it. And I drove my Civic, and actually, I don't know if maybe my Civic is still driving around today. Because I gave it to my son, who gave it to someone else, and then they worked on it. And for all I know, that 1998 Civic I have might be still driving around today somewhere. I drove that thing until I had, it was over 200,000, 300, near 300,000. And so I am not in great want of possessions. Finding God is the number one possession. The presence of the Lord does so much for you. He cures so many of your wants. And then I have a beautiful wife. What else could I ask for? What else can I ask for? God takes care of my needs. He's not always going to take care of my wants. But that's where I kind of live in a position in which I don't have great wants. Like I said, it drives her nuts because she thinks I should want things. There are things I want, but I must wait for them. And I have to be very patient. And I understand that things aren't always going to happen on my timing, but rather they're going to happen on His timing. I got to read Scott's message. Has a friend who both he and his wife make $100,000 a year, but they leave their 8 and 10-year-old home alone all summer because they can't or do not want to pay for daycare. The kids. And what is going through those kids' heads? They're being left alone. Not able to interact with others. We cannot get so focused on possessions and so focused on riches because again, we don't take it with us. And what's going to happen is that you have a lot of wants, and then you fulfill that want, and then you always move on to the next want. And then you get that want, and then you move on to the next want. You're never satisfied. But in the Lord, you're not going to get everything you want, but you'll get everything you need. And that's a beautiful thing. And so that is Proverbs 13. Yay, I think I did really good on time today too. We'll move on tomorrow on to Proverbs 14. Had to check my time, running really good on time as well. I have not been to work late yet since I've started doing these messages. I used to do these messages in really short time, but now since I've gone into more commentary and such and discussion. Now, like I said, you're not always going to agree with me. I am just one man giving my thoughts on this journey as I read through the Bible. And that's why I always encourage you to read through the Bible as well and to go into further reflection on these verses as I read them. Because God has a specific journey for you as well. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that you join me on my journey and we can walk together in His Word. But again, it's just my view. Make sure you're getting into the Word, getting into relationship with the Father, because He wants to spend time individually with you as well. He has much to say to you as well. We are all pieces of a puzzle. And as I am one distinctive piece, you are as well. And so all I can tell you is what's going on in my mind and what is going on in my thoughts, and try my best to do what is written in his word. And you guys can keep me honest as I walk. You can let me know when maybe I'm going a little too far and I'm going against what his word may say, and challenge me on that kind of stuff. But I encourage you not to follow me to the extent that you're not following the word anymore. Because if you follow any one man or woman to the extent that you don't follow the word yourself, you can be easily deceived. And all of a sudden stand before God one day and realize that you haven't been following the word, that you've been following someone else who wasn't doing a very good job of following the word. And at that point, you have no one else to blame but yourself. So stay in the word. Stay in relationship with the Father. I continue on in my quest for truth. And as I was driving in this morning, in reflection and in prayer and in listening to a message, I've come to a recognition that I feel like, and I have felt this for a while, that there's been a lot of deception and a lot of corruption that's been in our world, and for a very long time. And it's not been in just one party or the other. Your Democratic comrades will say it's all Republicans that are corrupt and dishonest. The Republicans will say it's the Democratic machine that is all corrupt and dishonest. What does the truth say? What I think we'll find out is that it's on both sides. That there are evil agents in both sides of the ledger. That there's been a lot of corruption and dishonesty that's been in our country my whole lifetime. How far back it goes, I don't know. I hope we find out. I hope the light continues to shine, and that God continues to shine his light over all the corruptness, all the evil. And what we're going to learn is that it's everywhere. That it's not only in politics, that it's in business, that it's in Hollywood, that it's in our news media, that it's in everything. There's good people and there's bad people in every walk of life. There's people that have been very good at hiding things for a very long time. And I think what we're going to find out is there's been corruption, there's been deception, there's been dishonesty going on for a very long time. It just blows my mind. The thing is that as I continue my research and I continue my search for truth, that what I realized as I was driving in today, that anytime you go out to seek a search for truth, you're going to run into things that are very dark, very sinister. It makes your stomach turn. It's so vile and so disgusting. It can weigh you down. It can sicken you. There are those kind of things that have gone on and are going on. And so that's why it's so very important that as I continue my walk in truth, that I have the light of God and his word. Because as I realized as I was driving in, that I need that. We need that. Because as long as we hold on to God and we hold on to His Word, we have the light in our hands. We have the light in ourselves. We become the light. And as we walk into darkness, and as we walk into corruption, and things that are so vile and disgusting and disturbing, we need to hold on to that light even tighter and even harder. And we have to seek the truth. This has been going on for too long. And what you need to understand is we need to be prepared. If you felt that times have been crazy and chaotic now, that all of a sudden these last couple years, that there's been this craziness that's bubbled up, that we're seeing people rioting for everything anymore. People are looking for reasons to be rioting in the streets and walking and picketing, and people saying disgusting things. And people opposing leadership. We better make sure that we're opposing the right thing. We must make sure that we're standing in God's light, in God's truth, and that we may not agree with everyone, but we must carry out in a way that God would want us to. We understand that there was times in which Jesus became angry, but He did not sin. He overturned the tables in the temple, but He did not sin, because He understood what was evil. He had righteous anger. He acted righteously always. He did not sin. We are told to be angry, but do not sin. It's okay to have a righteous anger, but we must be righteous. We must remain righteous. We must not take on the enemy and act like the enemy, because all of a sudden we can find ourselves falling away from God and becoming part of that same thing. So we must continue to act in a way that we are God's light. We must continue to speak God's truth in a fallen world. And not everybody's going to agree with us. And people are acting up because some have fallen away, or some have never been there. But we must not give up. We must continue to spread God's word and God's truth, because as this country has fallen away from Him, it is the reason why we're in the state that we are in now. It's because people have chosen to either walk away or chosen not to believe in Him. And they bring upon themselves the consequences because of those choices. And as our country has made laws and choices to fall away from God, is it any surprise that we now live in the chaos and confusion that we live in? And now we've got a situation in which there's some pushback, and people are in prayer, and people are standing up in a peaceful way against such things as abortion, and having peaceful protest to end abortion. We have to stand up. We have to pray. We have to act. And most importantly, we have to trust in the Lord. And we have to stay in His Word. And we have to stay in relationship so that we may continue to be the light and continue to hold the light. Because as we enter these dark places, we need to expose and seek the truth. And if we're not holding the light, we can become consumed by the darkness. It's just, I think about growing up. And will the history books be rewritten once we find out coming forward with what actually happened? We may have to rewrite history books. It's to that extent. How long have we been living in corruption? I don't know. But I'm looking forward to finding the truth. And you have to believe that those that cover the truth try to not allow it to see the light are going to be exposed as well. You may not be corrupt in your actions, but if you conceal the truth, if you choose not to show the full picture and you try to conceal and to hide the corrupt activities that have been going on, it's just like you were involved in it. People that try to hide things that have gone on, they may not have been part of it. But if you hide it, if you don't bring it to light, we're no better. So when you see something that is not right, that is corrupt, we have to put it out there. We have to find a way to extinguish it. I think I'll just leave it at that. And again, as I continue to go on my journey for truth, what I want you to understand is that if you decide to go on your own journey for truth, that you hold on even tighter to God's truth. Because God's truth is what we need in these days ahead. Because it's going to come out. It's going to sicken you. All the vile and disgusting things that have gone on in our nation's history, in my whole lifetime, and perhaps your whole lifetime as well, because I think it goes back a long ways. Take care. God bless. God bless America. Continue to pray. Continue to act. Continue to trust in the Lord. Hold on tight. We got a wild ride ahead. We're coming upon the new year. And from what I hear, if what I hear is right, 2019 is going to be one wild ride. And if it's what it takes to get the truth out there, then I'm willing to accept the ride for whatever it may be. Because what I know is that if I'm on the roller coaster and I have Jesus sitting right next to me, maybe I'll get a 3-carter because I want to have my wife sitting next to me too. So maybe I'll have my wife and I and Jesus sitting together on the 3-cart roller coaster. It'll be all good. And perhaps my close friends, I want to have them sitting behind me and in front of me too. So be prepared. Hold on tightly. We got a wild ride ahead of us in 2019. Take care. God bless. We'll see you again tomorrow morning for Proverbs 14, verses 1 through 5. See you then. Take care.